Hello and welcome to the Nerds Now Playing podcast, the podcast where we talk about all things nerdy, including movies, video games, and entertainment in general. I'm Tim, and with me today is a guest co-host, Amber, who was on our previous episode talking about Perfect Blue.
Yeah.
Well, a previous episode, rather.
Yeah.
This is all recorded in the Feely Podcast studio in Salina, Kansas. Amber, welcome back to the podcast. How are you doing today?
Oh, I'm doing great. kind of tired. Stayed up late last night watching movies, but worth
Yeah,
it.
it's been a long week for me as well, considering like between work events and I'm doing an event at the theater this weekend, helping
yeah.
out with Act Fest. So,
Oh boy.
which I was originally only supposed to be there for like 3 hours on Saturday, and my role has now, I guess I've been promoted.
Oh.
So I'm now a timekeeper.
The dangerous word.
Yeah. So I'll be there tonight, which means I have to miss game night, which is sad.
Oh no.
But it's how it goes. So what have you been up to this week other than watching movies?
Oh
and
boy.
work?
A lot. I went and got my new trays for my Invisalign stuff. I had one of the little nub things pop off and I had to go redo it, and then it took them like 4 times to get it right.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I haven't thought. I've thought about doing Invisalign, but I haven't just. I haven't ponied up and done it yet. Partly because of the money involved, and
Yeah.
my teeth aren't bad enough that I. Feel
Right. The nice thing is it's only like a one-time fee. Like you pay the $4,000 or $5,000, and then they just work on you until your teeth are the way that you want them to be, and then they're done.
Gotcha.
Yep. So.
Well, I mean, it's definitely
Pretty
worth
nice.
considering at some point. I think I would prefer that over braces.
Yes.
Certainly, because I don't really want to do that.
Yep.
But as far as like myself this week, not having a lot of time, I've just kind of been catching up on shows. So like I've The Mandalorian finished its season this week.
Sure did.
So I finished that.
Yeah.
Picard season 3 had its finale last night, which tied everything up. Which this season of Picard, season 3, has been really good.
I haven't watched any of it. Maybe you need to.
Season 3 is what seasons 1 and 2 should have been. 'Cause there's a lot. I mean, there's things about the first 2 seasons I like. I think they were disappointing in general, like overall to fans.
Makes sense.
So season 3 is a much better one. But it's supposed to be the final season of Picard, so I'm not sure where they're gonna go, because they also had not really a cliffhanger, but they had a teaser at the end, like after the credits. Which like more shows are starting to do that now too.
What do you
not
do
just
if that's your
movies.
final
So,
season?
yeah, I'm curious to see where that's gonna go. Other than that, just catching up on playing some games. I don't know if you. I know you play a lot of multiplayer stuff with your partner.
We just got a new PS5.
Oh my gosh!
Yeah,
Dang!
just a couple days ago. So
Where'd you find it?
that's what I did online. PlayStation's actually selling them now.
Oh
like,
yeah,
on their
I heard that they
website.
were. Yeah,
Right,
yeah.
and they're keeping up. So
I'm tempted to get one. I'm still tempted to get one because
the only reason we got one was because the DLC for Horizon was on
I
there.
did hear that was coming
it
out
was only
soon.
PS5 exclusive. So,
Gotcha.
and we'd already played the game, and we're like, we're itching because we love
Yeah.
that whole series. So
I have yet to play the second one. I still want to.
so good.
But I'm still working through my backlog.
Tears of joy.
Oh,
It's
man.
so good.
Dang. It's like I just finished, and Devin's happy about this because I just finished playing through all the Danganronpa series, which has taken me several months.
forever.
Well, because like the last game I started like a month ago, and like each game is not really that long. You can play it in a week.
Yeah.
But I've just been so busy with the show that I was in that I just couldn't do it. So I finally finished up that series, and I found a 3.5 hour long video on YouTube that
Oh
details
my god.
the entire timeline, including stuff that's not in the games. That was like, there was a manga that came out.
That's crazy.
So I may or may not have listened to that whole thing while playing Fortnite because I was catching my quest for that. So,
Yep.
But let's get into today's topic. So,
Yeah.
In the wake of the new Evil Dead Rises that's coming out to theaters this weekend,
Like today, I'm pretty sure.
I think so.
is
Yeah,
the day it airs.
yeah. Which I would consider going to go see it tonight, but I have
Yeah.
obligations.
Yeah.
So maybe Sunday I'll go and see it.
Yeah.
But so with that coming out, we thought it'd be good to talk about the Evil Dead franchise in general and horror in general, as well as review the last one that came out in 2013. That is a remake of the original movie.
Yep.
So before we get into that, Amber, what is your relationship with horror?
Oh my gosh, I love horror films. I've watched horror films probably since I was way too young to be watching them.
Do you remember what your first one was?
I remember the first scary movie that I like really remember was Stephen King's It, the original
Yeah,
one.
yeah, with Tim Curry.
And I watched it as a first grader at an all girls sleepover party.
Who made the decision
And
to watch this movie?
it freaked them all out, but I was like, this is the best movie I've ever seen.
Okay, so was this like at a friend? I assume this was at like a friend's house.
Yeah, it was.
Did they have like an older sibling that was like, oh man, it'd be so funny if we put this
we
on?
were all about the same age, really.
As first graders, you
Yeah.
were what, like 10, 6?
6, 7, like that. Yeah.
Oh my gosh,
Yeah, it was great.
that's insane. I don't think I watched that until I was maybe in high school.
Yeah.
Which, shocker, so I come from a Baptist upbringing, not like Southern Baptist. So like,
Right.
but we didn't really watch a lot of horror growing up. Like my parents
Yeah.
like horror,
Yeah.
because like my mom used to watch what is it with the Crypt Keeper? Tales from the Crypt?
Yeah.
So when she was younger, she would stay home and watch that on TV.
Oh my gosh.
And like she saw Psycho 2 in theaters before she saw Psycho 1.
Wow.
So it's not like they're adverse to
Right.
to horror at all.
Right.
We just didn't really watch it growing up, I guess because kids.
Yeah.
When you have kids, you have to kind of censor what they're watching. So, but like I watched Twilight Zone, and there are things that like
That's a little creepy. Yeah.
it's definitely creepy.
Yeah.
I mean, and I watch like my favorite movie is The Dark Crystal, and it's decidedly dark. So is Neverending Story.
I remember being really little, and this was probably before I was even in like kindergarten,
Ah.
and like walking out into the living room, and my parents are watching the old X-Files TV
Oh,
series, and
yeah.
it would scare the crap out of me. Like I'd peek my head around the corner, and I'd hear the theme song music. It's just like burned into my brain, and I just had to like run away
Classic.
from it.
Yeah, I don't. It's surprising considering like the stuff that like because I watched a lot of dark horror 80s or dark 80s movies for kids.
Yeah.
And like I don't remember ever being afraid of any of it. So either
Yeah,
like
not really.
I'm weird or different because like
Yeah, like Dark Crystal, Labyrinth, all of that stuff
'cause,
I
like, they're-
watched, and I was like, this is great.
they're
It's not
creepy and they're
scary.
absolutely dark. Which like there's a I think it's a quote from Jim Henson where he talked about how he felt that it was good like to show darkness to kids because not everything is bright and happy in the world,
Yeah,
and
that's fair.
so it's
Very
good
fair.
to kind of have some exposure to that. And I that makes a lot of sense to me. I mean, I don't have kids, so I
Right.
can't do that.
Having
But
PTSD flashbacks to horses dying in muddy swamps.
yeah, trauma inducing.
Right.
Yeah. Oh man, I need to rewatch Neverending Story. It's so good. It's like the no joke. I will say like the one thing that actually did scare me from that was Gamork, the giant wolf. Like there's
Yeah.
that one scene at the end where he's
Yep.
like in
Yep.
the cave and you can just see like the glowing
Yeah.
green eyes and the
Yep.
mouth opening. He's just talking about like how he's a servant of the nothing and everything.
Right.
Like, that freaked me out more than anything else did. Which
Oh,
so
that's
if I
so
ever get
funny.
another black cat, its name will be Gamork.
Ah,
Because
that's a good name.
I mean, don't get me wrong, I've always been tempted to get a really fuzzy one and name it Fizzgig from Dark Crystal, but that hasn't happened yet.
That's pretty cute.
I don't know. We'll see if I get another cat.
Yeah.
Because I mean, the one I have now, she's great, but I don't know if she likes other cats or not because she was
Oh.
fine in the shelter.
Right.
But there has been over the last several weeks this orange tabby that I've seen before. It must be a neighborhood stray, like just coming by to like to keep its territory.
Right.
Because like it'll just come onto my porch and like roll around on its back and like it loves attention.
Right.
So she's a very nice cat from what I can tell. But every time it comes by, Autumn, like she'll run up to she'll already usually be in the window and she'll look out and she'll see it and she'll like raise her head and start looking and like she'll run down off the couch to the door
Right.
and like be like swatting at the door and then she'll run back around the couch to my side, hop up on the arm and then go back and she'll just kind of make rounds. It's very weird.
Because that's her house.
It
Go
is her
away.
house.
Right.
It's like, I mean, if she's gonna be protective, I get it, but like, it just seems a little excessive to me. But like it's not likely she'll be able to get in the fight. When I got her
Yeah.
from the shelter, she has no front claws.
Oh,
so
yeah.
she
Yeah.
does have back claws and all of her teeth, which Raven
good.
did not.
Right.
When I had her, so at least she has somewhat of an advantage. She has some prowess.
Right.
But so talking about horror, so my personal relationship was that I didn't have a lot of it growing up, so I didn't
Yeah.
really get into it until probably high school and college.
Yeah.
Is when I started to watch more of it,
Mm.
and it's been the last few years I've really started to catch up on a lot of like the classic horror films.
Mhm.
So like I finally watched a few years ago like Friday the 13th and Nightmare on Elm
Oh,
Street, the
yeah.
original ones, and
Yeah.
Halloween, and all these other ones like in Candyman.
Yep.
Like I just watched that last year.
Yep.
So I'm slowly making my way through like the classics.
That's cool.
Because I did watch like the Universal monster movies, which
Mhm.
aren't like particularly scary,
Yeah.
but they're still in the
Yeah.
horror genre. But so talking about getting into the Evil Dead franchise. I should have asked. Do you have a favorite horror film?
Ooh. Oh my gosh. I think my favorite horror film that like I make people sit down and watch with me if they haven't watched it is the Pet Cemetery.
Original or new
The
one?
original one.
Yeah,
Yep.
I do love that. Denise Crosby and
Mhm.
oh my gosh, Fred Gwynn, I think is his name.
Yeah. I
He
can't
he
ever
played
remember his name, but
he was the main like Frankenstein guy from the
yeah.
Munsters.
Yep. Yep. But I really do. I make everybody sit down and watch that one with me because it's my favorite. Even though, like, I think the scariest thing in horror to me is like people moving their bodies in
Ah,
ways that they shouldn't be,
contorting.
but
Yeah,
it's still like physically possible. So,
yeah.
like, anybody who's like possessed, who's like crawling up walls and freaking out and
Mm,
doing weird stuff freaks me out because, like, while it's possible for a human to move that way, they shouldn't be.
right. Which is what like it's interesting that like that is kind of a thing in
So,
horror. Like
like,
they a lot of them will hire people who are
yeah.
able to contort their bodies physically that way.
Right.
Like contortionists specifically
Right.
are like it's wild.
But the Pet Cemetery, that's why it freaks me out because the character Rachel, her sister, has like a spine problem, like spina bifida or
Oh
some kind of
yeah.
scoliosis, and she's like bedridden and she can't move. But like
Mm-hmm.
in one scene, she stands up and like runs across the room at her, and she's like, Rachel, and I'm just like,
Oh
ah,
man, I don't remember
I'm
that.
freaking out.
Dang. I need to rewatch it. I like the few things I remember from that. I remember Denise Crosby's body coming back and like there was like an
Yeah,
eyeball hanging down.
it's really
And
creepy.
obviously like I remember the cat
Yep.
being just horrifying. So I haven't read a lot of Stephen King books. I have read It and I have read Pet Cemetery. I was reading somewhere that Stephen King actually he himself was freaked out by what he wrote for that
Yeah,
one
a lot
to the
of
point where like he's
yeah.
just like, oh my god, what have I
What have I
written?
done? Right.
Because like the book is even like is
It's
infinitely more
creepy.
creepy because like
Oh my
the
gosh,
kid,
it's so
the
creepy.
kid that he buries to try and
Mhm.
bring back
Mhm.
actually becomes like almost like demonically possessed, and
Yeah.
it says things that like
Yep.
it shouldn't like
Yeah.
just horrifying things that like
Just things that a kid shouldn't say, because this kid's like a toddler, he's like
oh
2.
yeah.
So, like, he wasn't, like, fully articulate and, like, speaking to begin with, and then he
Hmm.
comes back fully articulate, and it's really creepy.
Yeah, well, not only
Like,
that, like he's
"Ooh."
he's murderous.
Yeah.
Spoilers if you haven't read or seen the movie, over a
Right,
decade ago.
right. Oof.
Yeah, it's definitely one of my favorites. There's so many
Mhm.
more. I have a. I mean, a lot of his books are thick, but like
Yeah.
I have
I've read so many of them.
there's one I have on my shelf that was recommended to me a while ago
Mhm.
that I don't remember the name of. It's about this shop that I guess like a guy. It's kind of like a monkey's paw type thing. Like
Mm.
he has things to sell to you that
Mhm.
are in some way cursed or something,
Hmm.
or that will make your life supposedly better.
Is it thinner?
No, I
Or
have
is
heard of
it
that one.
okay,
I can't for the life. If you're watching and you remember what it is or know what it is, please comment in the video in the
yeah,
comments below, because I don't remember, or if Gus looks it up.
right,
But yeah, I can't remember off the top of my head. But it's like it's like this
yeah,
thick.
oh, yeah,
It's a
all of his
huge
books are
book.
thick.
But I mean, it's good stuff. If you
If
haven't
you
read, it's not really particularly horror,
Mhm.
but 11/22/63.
Okay, I
It's
think I've heard of it.
so it is about time travel and the JFK assassination.
Yeah. I
Um,
watched the show, that's what it was. They made a HBO or
I
Netflix
think
made a
so.
show
I need to
covering
watch
it.
that because I've heard
It's
it's actually pretty
really
decent.
good.
Yeah, but I mean the book is fantastic. I listened to the
Cool,
audiobook back when I was part of a book club,
cool.
and oh my gosh, it's such a
Yeah.
good
That
book.
TV show is good too.
Dang,
That like,
yeah.
it's definitely worth a watch.
Yeah, I need to watch that. So regarding, and it's actually talking about Stephen King actually kind of segues into the Evil Dead franchise.
Yeah.
So the original movie that Sam Raimi made back in 1980 came out in
Mhm.
1981. Strictly a horror film.
Yeah.
It was, very low budget. They actually ran out of money several times
Yeah.
during the production of
Yep.
that movie,
Yep.
to the point where like Sam Raimi had to like double as like a hand
Yes.
or like an arm
Yeah.
sometimes.
He's in his own movie.
Exactly. And so, but I remember I was reading up on the franchise,
Mhm.
and I guess he liked. So I think it was shown at like some festivals or something. But Stephen King himself liked the movie a
Oh,
lot.
cool.
Which
Cool.
is partly why it's how it got a sequel, actually.
Hmm.
So Sam Raimi was like, this movie is fantastic. You need to give this guy another one. So he helped directly get
That's
Evil Dead
cool.
2 made.
That's awesome.
As
I
far as
didn't
his
know that.
involvement further, I'm not sure.
Right.
Because the progression of these movies is very
It's
interesting.
very wild. It is.
Because like I said, so the first one, kind of what would nowadays be considered a very basic plot of like
Yeah.
5 teenagers going to this abandoned cabin to hang out and do some debauchery and just have fun, and it ends very badly.
Very
as,
badly.
people get possessed and chopped up and everything else. After the first one, directly in the second movie, it starts switching into comedy.
Yeah.
The second one,
Wildly.
very
Like,
much so.
like we're like serious, scary, people are dying here, horror, and then like the next movie is like, haha, that was funny as he chainsaws people, you know?
Oh
Like,
yeah, well, like probably one of the weirdest, but like one of my favorite scenes of that entire movie is he is going crazy after after having to kill his girlfriend Linda,
yeah.
and dismember her, and so he's just sitting in the house and like he just starts cracking up. He just starts laughing.
Like the deer head on the wall turns around and
Oh my
starts
God.
laughing at him.
That particular whatever they did for the laugh of that is actually disturbing. Like
It's
the look of the
crazy.
deer
Yeah.
and the
And
laughter
then
that
like
comes
the
from
lamp
it.
starts laughing at him,
Yeah.
and like a telephone laughs at like
Uh-huh.
everything
and like
just
the
starts
cabinets like that.
Yeah.
Literally, the house itself is laughing along with him,
Right.
until he's just like starts screaming.
Right.
It's such a great scene, but like it's so weird.
Right.
Like I don't think I've seen another film. Like I've seen other films where like the house
Right.
is technically possessed,
Yeah,
but not in that way.
no, like it's hard to tell if that was meant to be like his mind losing it,
Yeah.
or if it was actually the house like coming to get him, you know?
Well, it's kind of left ambiguous because like
Yeah.
it cuts back to him just like sitting in a chair
Right.
and
Being
freaking
like,
out
"What's
after
going
all
on?"
this.
Right.
Which-
Isn't the second one where he has like the possessed hand too that like starts
yes.
going
That
right. Like that's
I think
just
like that movie is really
so
what
funny.
cemented Bruce Campbell's career. I feel
Yes.
like he was definitely like a the star of the first one for sure. But this one he's a certified like B movie
Yeah.
person. Like he embraces the hell out of that and
Yep.
like he enjoys it.
Right.
And I am all for it. By the way, if you haven't listened to his autobiography,
You should.
oh my God, it's so funny. It's so good. I mean he's got a couple of them out there. I don't remember which one I listened to. But like he narrates the audiobook version, and like there's some things that he actually added as like an update in the
Yep.
audiobook that weren't in the physical copy. But his career is varied. But yeah, in this one he becomes much more kind of not quite like an action hero yet.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah,
Yeah,
the possessed hand scene,
Yeah.
it's so freaking funny because like he's just him using
Right,
his
just
own he's just
switching
fighting
his
against his
hand
hand as like
around.
it like moves around and like smashes plates into his own
Yeah.
face and his body and like punches them.
Right.
And like at one point, like he passes out and the hand is just like
Crawling
inching its
around
way
still.
forward and like
Right.
pulling the body. And then obviously he ends up chopping
Right.
it off.
Yeah.
But it does have one of my favorite lines in all of cinema, which is "You bastards, give me back my hand."
Yeah.
It's so good. Oh my God! If you haven't seen just the hand scene,
Yeah. You should.
oh, it's so funny.
You should.
And like later on, the hand actually is crawling around and like
Mhm.
flips him off at one point.
Yeah.
It's great.
Yeah.
Actually, in the so in college, I did surprise because there's a musical of everything these days.
Uh-huh.
There is an Evil Dead musical, and it's
I'm
actually
I'm not surprised.
fantastic. The music is really fun. I actually played you mentioned the moose.
Uh-huh.
I played the voice of the moose as well as the hillbilly guy.
That's so funny.
Which like I did like
I
a
didn't know
Bullwinkle-esque. Oh yeah.
That's so funny.
It also has a song where he's like there's a song I think it's just called "Join Us" where like the house itself is like and like the moose starts it by saying
Oh
"You
my
should join
gosh.
us."
That's
It's so funny. But there's like the cut off hand is in that too.
Yeah.
Like there's somebody else ends up playing the hand as it like scurries around on stage. It's
That's
fantastic.
so cool.
Yeah. So the second one is probably it's a kind of a little bit of a balance
Yeah.
between horror and comedy. I think
Yeah.
it does lean a little bit more into comedy
Yeah.
than horror.
I think it's probably because the first one was so like campy. They tried really hard to make it scary. And there were
Yeah.
some things that were scary because it was so low budget though.
Oh, yeah.
It was kind of like this is less scary and a little more funny. And then I think when they came into the second movie, they like embraced that a
They
little
really
bit more.
did. They absolutely did.
They're like, wow, this guy's makeup kind of looks a little funny. Let's make him say something hilarious.
Which I do love. Like, so in the second one, Ash does get possessed a couple times.
Yeah.
And I actually like. I think the makeup for him when he's
Was pretty
possessed,
good.
it looks fantastic.
Yeah.
I really like it. I think the second, like, I mean, you can tell absolutely that
Yeah.
the budget and just the overall quality of the second movie is just upped from the first
Oh,
one,
yeah.
significantly. But it still has a lot of those. It still has a lot of carryover from the first one. I mean, Sam Raimi also directed the second one, and like one of the signature things for Sam Raimi, aside from his car being in the movie and all movies that he's attached to, is that he has that, for lack of a better way to put it, the Raimi cam,
Yeah.
where it's basically
Yep.
a guy running through the forest
Yeah.
as like the demon
Yeah.
or the evil force, just
Yep.
sprinting through, and it's also like running through the house. Like I think at one point in the first movie, they didn't have like a track.
Oh, to like run the camera on?
Or maybe they did. I'm not sure, but either way, what they did in order to like bust through windows, is they put a 2x4 like right next to the camera.
Okay.
That just stuck out a little ways from it,
Right.
so that
So
it would break the window
glass
first,
Uh-huh.
and then the camera would go through.
Nice.
I don't know if I'm sure other movies have done that, and maybe there's a better technique, but that's what I think that's what he used,
That's
and
a
it's
good idea.
very effective.
Yeah.
I also like in the second one, there's a lot of different changes like camera angles. There's a lot of like
Yep.
top down kind of moving forward like this. There's a moment where they literally go between the walls.
Yeah.
As the evil force is chasing Ash through the house.
Yep.
I mean, it's probably the most balanced, and I think it's done really, really well. You also have kind of like we mentioned earlier. We were talking about before the show, I guess. The second one is not really a remake. It is technically a sequel, but
Yeah.
it does
kind of change the storyline because apparently Raimi had lost like the rights to the first one after he'd like published it, and in distribution you didn't have rights anymore. So then when they come in to do the second one, he's like, "Oh yeah, I want to do a recap of the first one," and they're like, "Too bad you can't have that footage." So they like reshot some key points, and those reshoots aren't like identical to the first film.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like it lost a little bit of continuity, but it's technically a continuation of the story.
Which, interestingly, I mean, different actress that plays Linda in this one, and there's also a different actress who plays Linda in the third one.
Yeah.
So that character is played by three
Yeah.
different people
Yep.
across the series. But yeah, so he couldn't use those clips anymore, so he had to reshoot it, and I think it's effective.
Yeah.
Just seeing like him going out for like a romantic weekend as opposed to with his friends.
Right.
Although I do really like the angle of like the other friends being there, because I think it added a lot, especially having his sister Cheryl there as being the first one that gets possessed. And I think like the voice, like, so we were talking earlier about like or last night about the voices used for the possession. I think the first one is what it is.
Yeah, it's a little comical if you
I mean,
go
it's very
back
campy,
and watch it. Yeah.
because of the low budget nature.
Yep.
But I do think like the possession voice is actually very effective.
Yeah, I think they did good
'Cause
for what
I
they
was rewatching it, and I've seen it before. I was still pretty creeped out.
Yeah.
Especially by Cheryl.
Yeah.
Like she just and like the other I think it's no, it is Linda, the original one. Her just like childlike laugh, like clown / clown
Creepy.
laughter is very unnerving. So transitioning into the third film, Army of Darkness, it goes completely onto
Left
the
field.
comedy.
Right.
Like
Way out
it
in left
does
field.
not. I mean, it changes. It even changes the like. It makes Ash really even more of like more of an action hero.
Yeah.
Like almost like a swashbuckling
Yeah.
action hero. Like I mean, there's literally a moment where he's fighting with swords, so it's straight up swashbuckling.
Yes.
But so in the third film, he is kicked back to medieval times, and ends up being
He's just there to look for the Book of the Damned again, pretty much.
Basically.
To get rid of the evil.
and like, I mean, it's so much more common. Like so, at one point on the way to get to the Book of the Dead, he goes to another. I think it was like a lighthouse or something, or like a windmill, to try and get away from the evil that was chasing him. And you get the there's a moment where he remembers what happened with the mirror previous one in in the second film, where he was staring into a mirror and like a version of him jumped out of the mirror and tried to choke him, which actually inspired me to make a meme. So I don't know if you are into like surrealism or not. But so I'm a huge fan of Twin Peaks.
Yeah, I love that.
And so in The Return, that came out several years ago, 2017, 2018, I think.
It's been a while now.
Because it's part 3 of the series. The Dale Cooper, that is like the evil Dale Cooper, is looking in a mirror and says, "You're still with me." That's good. Talking about the evil entity Bob. So I made...
Oh my gosh.
I made a meme of that.
It's so true. Isn't
posted. Sorry, I'm hitting the
Isn't
mic.
it when he was up in that tower? Doesn't he end up like breaking that mirror?
Yes, so
to keep
he
himself
remembers that
safe?
scene
Right.
that happening. So he's like, you know what? Screw that. I'm gonna break it, and ends up like a bunch of
Yeah.
mini-me's
Yes.
end
like,
up
it's a-
popping out of those and like starts
Yep.
tormenting him. Like,
Yeah. Like ankle biters, pretty much.
yeah, basically. And like there's a point where like he tries to like stomp on them.
Yeah.
He literally like pins one to a wall with a
Yeah.
fork. He like at one point he's seeing like the land numbers just falling down as he's trying to stomp on them, and
Yeah.
like they
Yep.
put a nail through his foot.
Ooh.
And then
Yeah.
like one of them like launches himself into his mouth.
Yeah.
Which is where you get kind of one of the main plot lines for the third movie, which is where it basically kind of buds out of him.
Yeah, he like splits off a whole nother like piece of him that is him.
Yeah,
it's strange.
It's very wild. It's an evil version of him.
Right.
Like he fights him very briefly and like
Right.
ends up the good Ash, quote unquote, does defeat him and like dismembers him because that's how
Right.
you're supposed to get rid of him.
Yeah.
And buries him, and then when he goes to get the book, which it doesn't go well because like one of the main things of that's most remembered for the franchise now is the phrase "Klaatu Varata Nikto," which is actually from what is it? It's a sci-fi film.
I don't know. I couldn't tell you.
It's an outer space. I can see it in my head. I can visualize the character, but I can't remember the movie off the top of my head right now. If Gus can confirm it, that would be great. Klaatu Varata Nikto is the phrase. But so he tries to say that, and he cannot remember the last part of it.
Oh
and
my
so,
God.
like, he ends up trying to like skirt by going. So like it's hilarious.
Oh man.
The phrase originated in the 1951 science fiction film "The Day the Earth Stood Still."
That's what it is. Okay.
Okay.
I couldn't remember what it was, but which if you haven't seen,
Nice.
the original one is fantastic.
Cool.
I really like it. I mean, granted, I like a lot of older films, so it was
So
remade
funny.
at some point, but I haven't seen the remake.
Right.
So yeah, it originated in that, and for whatever reason, they chose to use it in this movie.
That's so funny. That
and
just
so-
kind of like brings the comedy back in, where he's like, he knows all of it, but the last word he just.
which is like that just adds to the comedy of it. And but like directly before
people
that,
are getting chopped up and killed, and you're just
pretty much. And it's like directly before, like, so it ends up being like weirdly like there's three, like there's two other copies
Yeah.
of the Necronomicon.
Yeah.
One that like sucks him in
Right.
like a black hole.
Yeah.
And like his face ends up being weirdly proportioned after it comes
distorted.
out. And then the other one literally like bites his hand.
Yeah.
Which that's a side thing for me. Like in the first one and this one, the kind of vocalization of the book and his hand.
Yep.
I can't like. I have nothing against it. It's absolutely hilarious
right,
to
it's
me.
just so
It's
funny.
just going there, going,
Right.
like I mean, it's much higher pitched. It's so funny.
Right.
So he does get the book after incorrectly saying things, and surprise, because he didn't do it correctly.
Of course, it
the
didn't
army
work.
of the dead
Right.
comes to life. So evil version of him, who's now halfway rotted,
Yeah.
reassembles himself and decides that he's going to create his own army of the dead. So he raises a bunch of other ones, which I don't know if you so a lot of the skeletons that you see come up to life.
Yeah.
Is very stop motion, which Sam Raimi makes use of stop motion in all three, which I appreciate. But it's and it has to be a reference to Jason and the Argonauts.
Oh, okay.
At least to me, at least influenced by.
Right.
If you haven't seen it, there's a really iconic scene where the main hero Jason is fighting off this army of skeletons that Ray Harryhausen, who was like a stop motion genius back in the day, made those and like animated them
That's
like
so
frame by
cool.
frame.
Oh my gosh.
So like I'm guessing
That's
that's
a lot of
where he got
work.
the idea. But I think it works, and like they're hilarious when they're like marching upon the castle.
Yeah.
There's even like a band part of like there's ones that are like playing
yep.
bone flutes and like skull drums.
Yep.
There's
I
even a set of
remember
like
that.
bagpipers.
Yeah.
It's very weird.
Skeletons with no lungs playing bagpipes.
Figure that one out. But I mean, it's hilarious, and like the third one, it also goes hard in on the one-liners.
Yes.
Like
Oh
it
my
is probably
gosh,
it is definitely
yes.
the most quotable.
It is
of all the
obviously
films.
a comedy horror.
Oh, absolutely. It's definitely a comedy first.
Yeah.
Because like there's like the groovy, which has become like
Yeah.
the most like that's
Yep.
really probably the most iconic thing
Mhm.
that's carried through the franchise. Which that might have started actually in the second one, but I mean there's so many more like the Give Me Some Sugar Baby, Hail to the
Mhm.
King. I mean there's so many.
Right.
Out of the three, do you have a preference of which one that you like the most?
Oh my gosh. That's a hard question. I think I like the second one the best because it kind of takes like the parts of the first one that were kind of lacking and makes them a
Mm.
little better, but it also keeps like the horror vibe real with just like a little bit of added comedy,
Mm-hmm.
whereas like the third one is just like all silly.
Yeah, I would have to agree. I think the second one is my favorite as well because
Right.
it feels like it has that good balance between. I mean,
Mhm.
I appreciate the original one, the first one,
Yeah. Yeah.
because it is trying to be horror specific,
Yes.
and just in that genre alone,
Yep.
it just
And it was all practical.
it was, and like it
So,
looks great, and
right.
I mean, the effects don't necessarily hold up, and the
Yeah.
makeups don't necessarily
Compared to
hold up
now, of
compared to
course.
now.
Right.
But at the time, I mean, I
It was
think it was
great
really
for what it was.
solid. Yeah, coming out in the '80s, and
Mhm.
for someone who like ran out of budget several times, and like
Yeah.
just the
Honestly.
struggle to get it made, with the end product, I think
Mhm.
it still is really good and worth a watch.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
In another note, though, if you're gonna go watch the new one this
Mm,
weekend, you don't necessarily have to watch all of them in a specific order. There's no really through line continuity between
yeah.
all of them. They all kind of are standalone stories pretty easily. So
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and like almost all of them recap the previous
yeah,
one anyway.
yep,
So, if you were to watch any of the original trilogy before,
hmm
I would at least advise the first and second one,
yeah,
or at
yeah,
the very least the second one.
yeah. You don't have to do Army of Darkness if you
No,
don't.
I mean it's a
Yeah,
good time,
yeah,
but it's definitely like it's fun, but it's not my favorite.
yeah.
As far as like where to watch though, so if you want to, the original Evil Dead is available for rent or buy on Amazon.
hmm
Evil Dead 2, rent or buy on Amazon, or you can stream it on IndieFlix.
hmm
Army of Darkness is on Amazon. The one that we're discussing today is available on Amazon or Pluto TV.
hmm
And then obviously the new movie is coming out in theaters this weekend.
Yep,
Probably will eventually be on streaming like
yep,
Shudder or Amazon
yep.
eventually for sure. And then as a bonus, if you haven't seen, and I haven't brought this up yet, the Ash vs. Evil Dead TV show,
Yeah. Yep.
which is available on Netflix, Stars, and Amazon last I saw.
hmm
Have you seen any of the show?
I've seen like one episode and then I was like, this is good, but I didn't have time to watch it. So,
Yeah, I'm kind of the same. Like for whatever reason, I've tried to watch it a couple times, and I've
Mhm.
made it through. I think season 1. I think there's only 3 seasons.
Mm.
I made it through the first season, and I liked what I saw.
Yeah.
I just haven't gotten back around to it, and I have that relationship with several shows. Like I've been that way with Game of
Yeah.
Thrones. So like I've
Oh
watched
my
the first
gosh, yeah.
season probably at least 3 times because I watched it and then I like stopped for a while
Uh-huh.
and then I came back to it and tried to watch it
Yeah.
again. And I think I made it the last time as far as season 4, maybe into season 5. And
Yeah.
I still might
Yeah.
go back and finish it. I don't know. Like
Look, yeah, at
don't
this
get me wrong,
point
I love fantasy, but
Right.
I'm not as hardcore into that
Right.
show as others are.
Knowing you, you'll probably be disappointed when you get to the end if you do watch it to the end. So.
Yeah, I've heard things, so I'm not surprised if that's the case. And like I haven't bothered to watch the House of the Dragon show that came
Yeah,
out.
that one's actually pretty good. I did
So
sit down and watch it.
I might get around to it. I mean, I have the same relationship weirdly with Farscape, which is a sci-fi original TV show. I like it. Like
Yeah.
the Henson Company is involved, and I like what I've seen. But for whatever reason, I
Just can't make it through.
I just can't.
Hmm.
I was that
Makes
way with
sense.
The Office for a long time too.
Yeah.
Mostly because that first season is so cringe. It's so cringe. I mean, Michael Scott is just a cringy character in general.
Right.
But that's kind of the whole comedy of that show,
Right.
which is not everyone's cup of tea. I've come to appreciate it over time, but I'm more of a Parks and Rec fan myself.
Did the Ash versus Evil Dead TV show come out before the 2013 movie? I feel like it did.
I think so. Let me check my notes here.
Mhm.
No, actually, it came after.
Okay.
So
Oh, cool.
I think originally they wanted to do Ash vs. the Evil Dead as like a movie
Mhm.
or have him back, and I guess the studios weren't interested,
Yeah.
which is why they ended up making the Evil Dead remake. but they held on to that idea for the TV show.
Right.
So that
Right.
came out in 2015 to 2018.
Okay. That
So it
makes
came out
sense.
after this movie
Right.
that we'll talk about.
So, yeah, to me, it seems like it was probably a good studio choice on their part just to kind of get rid of, like, not necessarily get rid of, but like detach themselves from those
Yeah.
first 3 movies because there wasn't really a through story. So, like, the next movie had to either be completely different or it had to somehow make those other movies make sense.
Yeah, I would agree.
And there's no way to make those first 3 movies make sense. They just they
No.
don't. There's no continuity enough to like pull a line or a thread out of to make another story. So
And I mean, and I think as a TV show, I think it works better.
yeah,
Because you're able to bring in other characters. I mean, you still have Bruce Campbell as the main person, but like it also leans into the comedy. But it
yes.
has from what I could tell of what I have seen, it did have a pretty good balance of the horror aspect of things. Like the effects are well
Great.
done. Like
Right.
the demons and deadites that appear are sufficiently creepy looking. I mean, it looks like something that H.R. Giger would make.
That's cool.
If you know who that is.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it's interesting. It's worth a watch. I may have to, once I have time next week, dive back into it and try it again.
Yeah.
Because I do like the franchise. Like, so overall, how do you feel about the franchise in general as
I
a
love
horror
it.
fan?
Yeah, I love it. I mean, it it gives you a little bit of like taste of the funny and campy stuff at the beginning. Like if you're one of those old horror fans, like you like it. And then like as you get into like the TV series and this 2013 film, like the effects get a little more real. They get a little
Yeah.
more our time and our speed, and it becomes actually scary again. Like they
Yeah.
got rid of the comedy aspect as much.
Absolutely.
But like they tend to keep a lot of the like almost like Easter eggs from the first
sure.
3 films,
Yeah.
like hiding people in the basement under the trap door, or like the crawling and looking down the wall, and as she's like backing up, like
Yeah.
there's a lot of like parallels. Or the evil hand, they kept that and put it in the 2013 movie, but they like removed the comedy from those things
Yeah.
and made them actually scary.
Yeah, the 2013 one is definitely horror based.
Yeah.
So let's go ahead and take a real quick break, and we'll be back and go in depth into the 2013 Evil Dead. All right, and we are back to talk about the 2013 Evil Dead movie. Oh man,
Yeah.
where to start?
Oh my gosh.
This is an updated version.
Yep.
This is basically a remake of the original film.
Yes.
And I think it does a really good job.
I think it does too.
So in general, without going into spoilers, how do you feel about this movie?
I really appreciate it because like whereas I've seen the first 3 films, the first one to me is very campy and it is what it is for the 80s. But to see it again refreshed and made, really scary with real good effects and really good actors and actresses, like
Yeah.
it really just kind of blew the top off the story, and I think it just makes it so much more digestible for people of our time and generation, especially if you're a big horror film, and it's kind of got the same campy storyline, but it makes it actually scary.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. So I have put off watching this movie for a while.
So did I, actually.
And I don't. It's not because I was necessarily. I mean, like I said before, I wasn't like super into horror. Like I liked campy horror, but I hadn't really watched a lot of like straight up
Actual
like
scary
horror,
stuff,
yeah.
right?
'Cause, I mean, I'm not necessarily a particular fan of gore.
Yeah.
Like I don't mind it. Like the original one is all 3 of them, or at least the first 2 are definitely a gore fest.
Oh yeah, very slashy.
But it's not. It's the campy nature of it. Is what kind of makes me able to handle. Like I still haven't gone in and watched like the Saw series. Like torture porn is not my thing.
Yeah.
Which is
Fair.
what those definitely are. Or
Very
like
fair.
body horror. I'm not usually into that. Although there are some exceptions, like the David Cronenberg version of The Fly, with Jeff Goldblum,
okay.
is actually
Yeah.
really solid.
Yeah.
And the effects look fantastic.
Yep.
The original or the remake of The Thing, or the second remake, I should say, the one that John Carpenter made.
Oh,
The
okay.
effects in that one
Yep.
are so good.
Very good.
So like I don't mind gore if I
Yeah.
can handle, as long as it's not like super over the top. I mean, I've also seen one of the first Silent Hill films, which oh my
Yeah.
gosh,
Oh
that
my God.
I may have
Those
to
are
rewatch
rough.
that. Yeah. But so yeah, this one I really appreciate that they've gone back into horror. The effects are definitely updated, and a lot of them, interestingly, I was looking into the trivia of it. I got to remind myself who directed. Fede Alvarez. I'm probably mispronouncing that. But he wanted to make. He liked the original, so there's a lot of references to the original movies in this one.
Many.
But he went even so far as to the point of trying to make everything practical.
Yeah.
With
You
the
could
exception
tell,
of
too.
fire effects.
Right. You could really tell too. And they weren't campy, cheesy, bad
No,
practical effects.
they look
were
good.
excellent.
Yes. And especially like, there's, depending on the year, I mean, there's still stuff that comes out nowadays that's not necessarily top notch, but
Yeah.
2013 is when this came out. And I mean, this is
So far, even still since then.
I mean, it's literally a decade later.
Yeah. Right.
And it still looks good. So I think that's a testament to how this movie looks. It had a budget of $17 million.
Wow.
Which is,
Okay.
actually, I mean, by Hollywood standards,
Yeah.
is pretty small.
Yeah.
And in the box office made $97.5 million
Dang.
worldwide. So I would say it's a certified hit at least.
Right.
Maybe not like by Marvel standards, but
Well,
like
of course. Yeah.
amongst, I mean, not everyone loves horror, but I
Right.
think amongst the fans who like it, I think that they like it. So the basic plot of this one as a remake, and I'll just read it from the synopsis that I have, is 5 20-something friends become holed up in a remote cabin. When they discover a book of the dead, they unwittingly summon up dormant demons living in the nearby woods, which possess the youngsters in succession only until one is left intact to fight for survival.
Yeah.
So this one, I think it's interesting. And this one is, it does not have the original characters. So Ash does not really make an appearance in this film.
But it kind of has the same storyline. Like
Yes,
when you get there, are we ready for spoilers?
Yeah, I think we can
Okay.
go into spoilers.
Because when they first get there, right, like the sister is still the first one possessed, technically. And then like the guy who reads from the Book of the Damned unknowingly does it. But like, can we talk about how Eric is just like every basic white, like should be normally a girl in a movie like that is horror. If you're talking about tropes, who gets everyone into trouble first.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Right, she's the one who trips in the woods. No, he's the one who decides to flip through every page of this book where it says, "Don't read these words. Don't even think about these words. Don't say these words. Don't do anything with these words." And he gets a piece of paper and a rubbing crayon and rubs the book to figure out what the words are so he can say them. I'm like, you jumped through every hoop to mess this up.
He
for
really
people.
did. Well, like you would think, like he must be that much of a cynic and have that level of skepticism to ignore what's happening. Considering, so this film opens up with totally detached from these characters. A random girl who's being chased through the woods who gets captured by like hill folk.
Yes.
And taken to a basement where they
where
basically
they burn
say,
her alive.
Yeah. Which you do. I mean, she gives off the appearance that she's not possessed, but
Right.
she does at the very end. She is possessed,
obviously.
So somebody there, and it must have been whoever was there previously that read the book and did all this stuff, and so they have this kind of older lady who I guess
Has
somehow
the
knows
knowledge.
about what this book does.
Yep.
And so ends up cleansing her soul with fire.
Yes.
And then like after that, they wrap the book in like
plastic and duct
then
tape
put-
and barbed wire.
and barbed wire.
Right. And this guy's
Um,
just sitting at his desk cutting the barbed wire, pulling all the plastic off. I'm like, look,
you would
man.
think that like if that like I mean, and not only that, like in the basement there were like dead cats hanging
cats,
everywhere.
blood splashed all over the walls.
Uh-huh.
Like, come on, man.
Like if they've gone to that level, like you would like I don't know about you, like I have not been to a lot of haunted houses or
Yeah.
had that experience.
I'd see the blood on the floor and just nope right out.
Uh-huh.
I wouldn't have even gone in the basement. I wouldn't
Probably
have had
not.
a chance to find the book.
No, and like there's a part of me that's like would be curious, but like I don't think I would have the stomach or even like the
Not
desire. Like
even kind
I
of.
would just nope out. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
And like I just his decision making.
Just so
is-
bad.
Like I mean it's a horror trope, like someone's got to
Right.
get the ball
Oh, yeah.
rolling, so he does. But yeah, so it's interesting you mentioned like the tropes and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So I had the realization as I was thinking about the movie this morning, all the women are the ones that get possessed first.
Yes. Yep.
I don't know why. I really want to know why that's the thing.
Yeah. As soon as I learned one of them was like a certified nurse and had medicine and could actually take care of them, I'm like, she's going to be the first one to get possessed and die. And guess what? After the initial bad thing happened,
Oh, yeah.
she was the first one to
Yep.
get possessed and die.
After it, yeah. Which let's talk about the possession of Mia. So I
Yeah.
should mention. So the main characters in this film are Mia, David, Eric, and Natalie.
hmm
Is that all of them? Am I missing one?
I think that's
2,
it, right?
3.
There's 4 of them.
Is it just 4?
Eric, the other guy,
Isn't it
and then the
5?
2 girls. Oh, his girlfriend.
Oh yes.
I can't remember his girlfriend's name though.
Well, I think Natalie was
she
the
was
girlfriend.
very.
Oh, Olivia's who I'm missing. Olivia is the
is
nurse.
the nurse.
Yes.
Okay,
Okay.
there we go.
For some reason, I missed that in my
Olivia
list.
and Natalie, the girlfriend and the nurse, were both very side main characters.
Yeah, they definitely
weren't
were.
in the film too terribly long.
No,
One because they
didn't really have a
died,
lot.
and
Yeah.
2 because she was just hanging off her boyfriend the whole time, afraid,
Yeah.
and then died.
Yeah, they
So-
didn't really have. I mean, Olivia had at least a little bit more personality.
Yeah,
But
Yeah.
she didn't like her and Eric. Natalie and Eric don't really have. Well, even David either.
right.
The 3 of them aren't really fully fleshed out characters to me. Like, they're not necessarily one
They're just
dimensional,
kind of
but
riding the train until it blows up on them, kind
yeah,
of thing.
they really are. So let's talk about. I guess before we get into it, or the possession. So Mia is is David's sister.
Yes.
Who is there to detoxify from whatever
Yes.
drug she's on. I don't know if
Meth.
it's crack. Is it meth?
Yeah.
Okay. And so like they've tried it before and apparently
Right.
it didn't work.
Yep.
Or it didn't take. And so
Mhm.
like they're so determined
Determined.
this time to like we're not going to let you leave.
Right.
Otherwise you're just not going to be able to handle it again
Mhm.
and you might OD again
Right.
like she
Right.
did the first time. And so she after Eric stupidly reads from the book.
Yes.
Um
she gets possessed running through the forest.
Which let's talk about the possession. So that
Oh,
is
that's so
definitely a
creepy.
direct once like she gets into like the tree branches and
Yeah.
stuff,
Mhm.
straight up from the first one as well.
Yep.
Which I don't have another way of saying it other than tree rape.
Yeah, for the most part. It just kind of crawls up her leg and then up under her skirt, and you're meant to assume that it's somewhere inside of her now. So,
Which is it's interesting that so the evil force whatever in this one
yeah.
appears as like a doppelganger version of yourself.
Yes.
Whereas like in
Yep.
the original ones you don't
didn't-
see
you
that
didn't
at all.
See the bad.
So
Right.
I kind of like that aspect of seeing this
too.
other version of yourself that's like what you're going to become.
Mhm.
And you see it later too, is like after she's possessed, you see in the
Yep.
mirror just a version of her
Of
like
her just like rocking back and
bloodily
forth
and like tongue in
chattering
the
her
air.
teeth. Right.
It's horrifying. But so the way she's possessed of the like these bloody or like
Right. It's like
oily vines
yeah,
almost
like
that literally crawl into her through her
Yep.
privates. I don't know if that's become like a horror trope in and of itself because
I don't know.
weirdly I have seen another movie that did a similar thing.
Okay.
I think it's from around the 80s as well.
Huh.
There is a movie.
The 80s was a wild time.
No joke. It might have been the 70s. I'm not sure. There's a movie called Lady Terminator.
Okay.
The only reason I know of its existence. So when I used to live in Lawrence, there's Liberty Hall,
Mhm.
which is like a movie theater / like it has a bookstore or like a movie
Mhm.
store attached, so you can like rent stuff or buy
cool.
movies. And they had a mystery pack
Oh god.
of like X-rated movies.
oh,
And so
no.
one of my friends, who's a horror fan,
Right.
she
Was
bought
like,
that.
sure, why not?
And so
Right.
like I went over to her house I don't remember what I went over to her house to watch it. It was supposed to be me and a couple other people, but it ended up just being me and her. And so we watched, and there's a scene in Lady Terminator where similarly this weird like almost like snake or worm thing that's like the possession of evil or
Oh,
whatever
Lord.
like literally
crawls up in there,
into
huh?
her through that
Oh.
place.
Ugh.
So and I remember a similar thing happening in the Silent Hill film, or at
Right.
least
Right.
a person at the end, barbed wire is forced
Oh my
inside of them
gosh.
through that orifice
Yikes.
as well. So I don't know. I guess that's a trope.
Maybe. I
Um,
guess.
But so
Ugh.
she gets possessed. Mia
Yeah.
gets possessed, and so we were talking
It
about
just
this
goes
before.
downhill from there, man.
Oh my god! And so
Quickly.
it very much does. So to give context, so she is played by Jean Levy,
Yeah.
who so almost all the characters in this or actors in this I'm unfamiliar with.
Yeah.
I have never seen them in anything else.
It's so
You
crazy.
recognized a lot
I've
of them.
seen so many of them in other places. Like I almost couldn't separate myself
Mm.
from those characters.
Yeah.
So Mia in this one is actually the lead in Zoe's playlist, right?
Which I
Which
so I have
Gus
never seen.
Absolutely loves that show. So if
he-
he gets on the Millinote, we put a picture of Zoe versus Mia.
So I'll actually show it to the camera here.
Yeah.
So this is her from.
She's so cute and sweet. She's got a nice little green sweater and red hair, and she's just so adorable.
And now I'll show you what she looks
nice
like in this
and-
movie after possession.
she's just so cute.
This is her in Evil Dead.
And then what the heck is that?
Like, it's
I'm scarred for life.
I know. It's
So
bad.
I've never seen Zoe's Extraordinary Playlist.
Yeah.
It's insane. Like just
It's
so that
crazy. And I just couldn't separate myself from it. Like when we first started, because she's a drug addict. She's got like black hair. She's a little bit like spicier than Zoe ever
definitely.
was. And like, I'm just like, every time she does something, I'm like, Zoe, no.
Yeah, like, and it's a testament really to the effects of this film.
It's
She
so
looks
very
very, very
right.
creepy. And out of the three of them, like she's the one who like is possessed the longest.
Yeah.
And there's a moment in this movie, and it's one of the main ones that kind of deterred me from this for a long time. So in the trailers, there's a moment where you see a character basically cutting her tongue in half.
Yes, that was her.
It was her. I wasn't sure who it would be.
Yeah.
So like that happens later on in the film after
Yeah.
she's possessed.
Oh my
and
God.
Natalie
Ugh.
stupidly
goes
stupidly goes
downstairs?
into the cellar.
What? Again, I just don't. These people, man.
I mean
don't know.
I mean that's another horror trope thing, like people
Right.
doing things that are just stupid,
Dumb. Just so dumb.
Which I mean, I guess if I were in that situation, like having already seen what she did, like I
Right.
would maybe be curious. Like
Yep.
we've all made bad decisions,
Yeah.
and that is definitely one that like logic at that point, like you're outweighed by like your. I mean, I don't think she knows Mia, but like she's like,
Yeah.
well, this is my boyfriend's sister. I should
Right. Do something
maybe
about it.
yeah,
Check on
exactly.
her, But
and so
I just
she goes down and like
and the acting is just so good because like
I think that she does. Mia does.
yeah, I like
Jane Levy does
I
such a
see
solid
her
job.
outside of horror, and I had no idea she'd ever been in a horror film. But apparently, she's got like 3 or 4 other horror films
Yeah.
she's been in.
Which I haven't looked.
But,
I'll have to
like,
look into those and see what
Right.
they are.
I just did not assume she would go that hard, but like she like picks up a razor blade and just like licks it until her tongue splits, like all the way down her throat.
Yeah,
pretty
which
much.
like oh my god, like
I was
I
just
didn't
like,
expect, like I knew that I saw that in the trailer, and like that was one of the reasons why I'm like I don't know if I want to see this.
right.
So I've held off for that long. But so and immediately after that she
Right. Goes
basically
up and like
French
makes out with
kisses,
her.
which like unexpected,
Yeah.
unnecessary, but unnerving. So it serves the purpose of
Indeed.
like throwing you off.
And then she bites her hand, like right in the crook of her
Yeah.
thumb. She like bites it, and that's where she gets the crazy hand from the second movie.
Yeah, which and she doesn't do like the comedic like fighting
Yeah,
against it, but
it's
she
actually
does.
horrifying.
Absolutely. And she actually does cut off her own arm. So one of the other things that I know for a long time that I thought about this movie was that I had heard that there was going to be a female Ash was going to be like
yeah,
the thing.
yeah.
Which so going throughout this movie,
I was
I was
lost.
waiting for
Yeah.
that to happen. Like I was
Me
like,
too.
okay, is Natalie meant to be the final girl?
Right.
And be the one because like she's cut off her arm.
Right.
So is she
With a
going
meat
to
carver.
with a
She's
meat carver? Yeah.
Yeah. Ugh.
And so I thought she was going to be the one, but like for a long time it was David who was still like the
he's the only one
like
who's
the-
alive. Though Eric, can we talk about Eric again? We need to like supercut like how
Oh.
many times that man has been stabbed and lived.
I don't.
'Cause,
He
like,
has such
at the
fortitude.
beginning of the movie, the man gets stabbed in the heart with a piece of glass.
Yeah. Well,
and
not only
then
that, like stabbed in like the face
they
with
just-
a needle.
Yeah, they just put some duct tape over it, and they're like, "You're fine." And then he gets stabbed in the eye with a needle
Uh-huh.
full of sedatives.
Yeah.
It goes like straight to his brain. He doesn't even fall asleep. And then he gets shot by a nail gun like 6
Several
or 7 times.
and gets stabbed again.
And then he gets stabbed again by Mia. The girlfriend gets stabbed again by the girlfriend in the gut. And I'm just like, how many times is this man
like-
going to get stabbed and live? And he lives clear up until the end.
pretty much. I mean,
I'm like,
yeah. It's like he's like Rasputin in this movie. He
It's
just
weird.
won't freaking die.
yeah,
Which not that I wanted him to die, but like
right.
how he didn't before. Like oh
Right.
my god, like his level of
This man is more blood outside of his body than inside of his
at
body.
that point, yeah, no joke. So yeah, with Natalie, I thought she was going to be the final girl that ended up being the Ash surrogate, for lack of a
Yeah.
better way to put it. And I was very thrown off
I
when
was
she
too.
wasn't.
Right,
When it still seemed to be David who was the one who was
Right.
going to be the protagonist.
right.
And so like when she was possessed, like shooting nails into her own face and then
Yeah.
into Eric.
Very pinhead of her.
Very much so. Which I don't know if you've seen. I have seen the Hellraiser. Well, I haven't seen all the franchise,
Mhm.
but I have seen the original one and the new one that came out last year. Which the new
Oh,
one,
okay.
it's okay. They do some new things with the Cenobites, which is interesting. But so yeah, I didn't expect that. And then so you find out from the book that there's 3 ways to
Yeah.
purify or cleanse, which is
Yeah.
one by setting them on
Flame,
fire,
right.
one
Chopping
by
'em up.
dismemberment, and then the last one burying them
burying them
alive. Which interesting that was a choice.
Yeah.
So he ends up doing all three. So he sets
Right.
Olivia on fire.
Yep.
Or sets her corpse on fire.
Yep.
He chops up his David chops up his girlfriend.
Right.
And then his sister, he ends up he and Eric have a plan
To burn her.
They were going to
originally.
initially burn her, and
Right.
then David couldn't go through with it.
Yeah.
And so they end up going to the basement and managing to basically give her a massive sedative.
Yes.
And like tie up her body and then bury her alive, and it being the plan.
And he makes some wild defibrillator out of some needles and a car battery.
Yeah. I didn't know, like, I wasn't sure exactly what he was doing
I wasn't
when he was
either.
making that, because I wasn't thinking. So they
Right.
mentioned at the beginning of the film that she had OD'd once and that she was legally dead for like a minute.
Right. And could be
And
brought
they had
back to life.
that
Right.
they had the defib that they had to do,
Yep.
and that she was brought back. So that was not even in the back of my mind when
I
this was
didn't-
happening until
nope.
after the film. I'm like,
Whoa.
oh, I see, because she was dead once before, so this
Right.
was his whole plan.
Right.
So he buries
Buried
her alive
with a plastic bag on her
with a plastic
head.
bag over her head, so she suffocates,
Jesus.
like doubly so.
Right.
And like there's a like flame on a nearby tree, and like it literally
Right.
goes out
Right.
after she's dead.
Right.
And then he
Digs
digs
her
her
up
back out
real
and
fast.
uses the defib
Right.
that he made, and it does bring her back. I was very surprised.
Yeah, I was
to
too.
see her back alive. I did not
honestly
expect
thought
that
she
to
was
happen.
still possessed, because like she was doing the very innocent like David voice that she did when she was trying
Yeah.
to lure him to get him to kill him. Right.
Yeah, I straight up thought she was going to be still
I did
possessed.
too.
So that was actually a good twist, I think.
Yeah.
To bring her back. Although I'm curious if her tongue is still split in half. At that point.
Oh God, I hadn't even thought about that.
So maybe those things just go away
Yikes.
when you're dead and it reseals
Oof.
itself. But so she's brought back to life, basically.
Right.
And that's when you see like he's in the house ready to go grab the keys and get them out of there.
Yep.
And that's when Eric comes back. all
Surprisingly,
possessed.
finally, he died.
After a while, like after Eric David seals his own fate and
Yeah.
locks the door and
Burns
shoots the
all of them.
gasoline can with the shotgun and explodes the house.
Yep.
And Mia is left alive. Although it then starts raining
Yeah.
blood.
Yeah, that's like the
Um,
fifth person who dies or something.
So it
and
technically
triggers-
raises, I think, what's called the Abomination,
Yep.
which I guess is another doppelganger version of her.
Yeah, it's like a copy
Um,
of Mia, but
Which
like an
I wasn't
actual
expecting that
deadite.
either.
Right.
Because like I will say I was a little disappointed by that.
Yeah.
Because I like they see an Abomination. I was expecting something grotesque and horrifying,
Right.
and that wasn't
She
what we
was
got.
Right. She was kind of like bodily dysmorphed a little bit, but
A little. I mean, the face was
right.
definitely creepy.
Yeah.
Because there's a moment where you
Yeah.
clearly see what her face looks
Yeah.
like, and I mean that is effective as she's chasing her around. But then we get to one of the things that is like I was sitting there. So she goes into the tool shed,
Mhm.
and
Yep.
I was waiting for it the entire movie.
Yeah.
Chainsaw.
Yeah.
I was sitting on my couch going chainsaw.
Chainsaw. Like
Chainsaw.
or like when they went in there to make the defibrillator, he looked right at the chainsaw, almost
Uh-huh.
grabbed it, and then went for like an axe or something instead.
Yeah.
And I was like, chainsaw.
Use the chainsaw. It's part of the franchise. So she does get the chainsaw, and
Yep.
she can't get it started first. It needs gas, and then
Right.
this thing is chasing her. Interestingly, at one point, like through the walls.
Yeah. Yep.
Like in the second film, which I like.
Yep.
It's a good homage to that. And then she ends up busting her way out of the shed.
back of the shed.
and
yeah.
then ends up like under the car and like chainsawing the Abomination's
Legs.
leg off, and then basically through the middle of her
Yes.
head.
Yep.
And that's how she manages to do it, but not before, or right before.
Right.
She manages to get out of the way of the car as
Being
the
pushed
Abomination pushes
over
it
on
over,
her,
but it
right.
lands on her hand.
Like
So this is the second time in the film
where
that.
somebody's had to like rip an arm off.
And when she she didn't even have the luxury of like doing it quickly. She literally had to.
Yep. She
pull
braced her feet against the hood of the car and just kind of pulled her arm out, and it
Which,
just
like,
cut her arm off.
Absolutely, like I cannot imagine
The pain.
of doing that.
Oh yeah.
I mean, I
And you
would
see
think
like
at that
the
point,
ligaments and the
Uh-huh.
bones and stuff separating.
like, oh my gosh,
ooh.
it's so grotesque.
Yeah.
But so she does that, and like, I mean, she doesn't have the ability to like make a chainsaw arm, but like in the
Yeah.
original film,
Right.
but she does manage to still use it.
Yep. She has the handle of the chainsaw, and she just jabs her little stump of an
Yeah.
arm through the handle.
Mhm. And makes
chainsaws her.
makes use of it.
Right.
So like, I'm glad that they still have the element of kind of pulling that from the second movie in.
Right.
And then she manages to defeat the Abomination, and then basically walks off.
Yeah.
And she's found at the end by an old guy after the credits, basically.
Yep.
And it tries another jump scare, interesting at the end.
It does.
Where it zooms in on her face, particularly on her eyes. And I mean, as a person who's experienced in watching films, I knew they were going to do like an eye open thing. But interestingly, her eyes aren't possessed.
Right.
So I'm wondering why that's even there.
Right. Why is
like,
it scary if she's not possessed anymore? Right.
Is it just the luxury of trying to get one last jump scare? I'm
Right.
not really sure.
Right.
And then if you watch all the way through the credits, you actually are treated to not even more references, or even more references as you hear audio from the original movie of what was on the cassette.
Yep. Somebody finding the book and
reading through
how
the
something's
original
gonna come
guy.
after it.
And then you're treated to Bruce Campbell
Right.
showing up.
and like just
in the shadows and just says
groovy.
which like a lot of fans I was reading in the trivia kind of took that as his seal of approval.
Yeah. Right.
So I think like overall I do like the movie. I think that it does a really good job of updating the effects.
Yeah,
I think it looks
so
good.
too.
I mean, there's nothing I guess necessarily new about it, and like I said, I don't watch nearly as much horror as you do. So maybe there's other people out there who didn't care. I did read Roger Ebert. He had a review of it. He was not favorable.
Oh.
He felt that everything was kind of just the same stuff you've seen before, and he gave it a 1 star.
Well, that's kind of the point of the movie, though, is because since the movie was made in the 80s, everything that came after that was made kind of in the vein of that movie. So the campy cabin teenage horror came from the 80s and when that was a thing. So of course in 2013 that trope has already been overdone because everybody did it. But like if it's an exact copy of the first movie just updating it, like there's still space for that, I think, without it being too campy or too weird.
Yeah, and I would agree. I think that his review is a little unfair in that regard. Because I mean, it's not anything new, but we've been spoiled by having all this.
Oh yeah.
And I mean, you can see like Raimi's influence after making that movie. Like there are so many others, like you mentioned, that have that. There's I was playing a video game recently that actually had straight up like a movie theater in the thing, and like you could see almost like a Mystery Science 3000 type thing.
Oh yeah. Okay.
I think the movie was called Demon Wind. And it straight up is like almost the same
campy
plot.
horror on this.
Like it's like it had to have been from the 80s or later. And like it's a group of people who go to this house to like have like sex in the cabin and do all this other stuff, and someone gets possessed and like they literally can't leave.
Right.
There's a scene in that movie where they're trying to leave and they're surrounded by fog and they just keep walking and they
just keep coming
end up
back to the
the
cabin.
same. Yeah.
Right.
So like
Makes sense.
It's happened a lot, and then I mean, if you really want to see a really great film that kind of takes that trope and puts it on its head or puts it on its side, if you haven't seen Cabin in the Woods, which
that's a good one too.
Is that no? It's not Joss Whedon, is it?
I don't remember.
I don't remember who made it, but I mean, it takes all those horror movie tropes
and kind of like weaves them in pretty well.
It does a great job. Like, there's so many references in that. Like, there's this whole like organization that's like trying to fight. And, like, there's this thing that's supposed to like destroy the world and everything. Like, it's really interesting to see everything put there. But I think, and that came out, I think, after this.
Yeah.
So I think this is a good job of really updating things.
Right.
There are things about the original that I do think work better, to a certain degree.
Oh yeah.
I think the voices that they used when Cheryl is possessed in the original one is a
really
bit
great.
more effective at being creepy than what they used in this one, because there's like this layering effect.
Yeah, where it's like you can hear their real voice, but you also hear like the possessed voice.
And I think like I like that. There's just something that's creepier about that. And I think Cheryl, the person who played Cheryl, did a really great job.
Yeah.
Of doing this, especially on like the "We're gonna get you," which they did bring back for this one as
they
well.
Did. Yep.
But I do think the original one, it's a little bit creepier.
Yeah.
But I think overall, I think this is a solid movie.
Oh yeah.
So I guess final thoughts for me. Yeah, I think it's great. Would you recommend watching it?
Oh yeah. I think if you're going to go and watch the new one that's coming out, you should at least watch the 2013 version. Like, just to kind of know what's going on. Even though they're standalone stories and you don't have to, it's totally fair to not watch any of them and just go out and see the new one.
Yeah.
But like, if you want to know anything, it's good to watch the 2013 one.
Yeah, I would agree.
For sure.
And something interesting, looking across the franchise, all of these are fairly time-wise digestible movies.
Yeah, they're all pretty short.
All of them are, the original trilogy are all under 90 minutes.
Yep.
Like just shy under 90 minutes. This one is an hour 31 minutes,
Yep.
and the new one is an hour 37.
Yeah.
So they're all in like that 90-minute time frame, which
Yep.
is interesting. It's interesting that they stuck to that.
Yep. But it feels like they're longer. Like you get
It
sucked
does.
in so hard that it feels like it goes on longer, but it really doesn't.
No, and I think it's a good thing because like, we have it. There's a tendency now to try and make everything epic and
Yeah.
last 2.5 to 3 hours
Yeah.
long.
You don't have to do that.
And yeah, I agree. I don't think it's necessary. So it's kind of nice to like. I was able to rewatch all of these movies this week
Right.
when I had time. Like
Yep.
I watched the first 2 in one night.
Wow.
I mean, I probably
Yeah.
could have watched all 3 in one day.
Yeah.
I mean, I definitely could have watched all 4 in one day, if given the time. But so let's go ahead and rank this movie.
Okay.
So on our ranking scale, we have avoid, meh, solid, great, and superb.
Okay.
Of those, what would you rank this movie?
Oh boy. Somewhere I would say between solid and great. So like maybe a half star in the middle. Like I wouldn't say it's like a superior best, horror film out there, but I would definitely say it's worth your time watching.
Yeah, I'd have to agree. I think it's between like solid and great for me as well because I mean, I think I've seen other horror films that are more exceptional and do a better job of really creeping. I finally watched Hereditary recently,
Yeah, that's a
and
good one.
Barbarian, and both
Yep.
of those do a great job
yeah.
with.
And the twists are there, like the tropes are still there, but it's not like so tropey you can predict the end.
Right, like
it's
it does a good job. Those do a
Yeah.
great job of subverting expectations.
Yes.
And to me, that's one of the things that a great film does. Is that
Right.
especially if you're an experienced moviegoer, you start to recognize things. So
Yep.
if the movie can twist it on you and throw something at you that you didn't expect,
Yeah.
then it's worth watching.
Oh yeah.
This one, I mean, it doesn't really do that.
Yeah.
Other than like it bringing Mia back and having her end up kind of being the heroine at the end, which like I was sitting there going like, okay, you got
Yeah.
me. Like
What a twist.
like that was a great addition, but I would
Yeah.
say it sits pretty squarely between solid and great for me as well. I think it's worth watching. If you want the campy side, absolutely go watch the original trilogy. If nothing else, watch the second one. Evil Dead 2 is fantastic. I think it's worth watching.
Yep.
This one I think is a pretty solid like introduction
Yeah.
to get back into things, especially if you want just straight up
Horror.
horror. And I don't know about you. I haven't watched that many trailers for the new one.
I haven't either. I've watched a few, but
Because I'm
it
trying.
seems
I'm starting
like
to get to
there's
a
going to
point.
be a little bit of a mix between the comedy and the horror. It seems like the main possessed character that we've seen in those ads has like some quippy one-liners
Yeah.
that might be a little funny, but they're still like horrific.
Yeah, and I'm really interested. So it looks like this one might take place also in like a different location than like out in the middle of the woods.
It looks like
seems
somebody's
like
house, like
Yeah.
somebody's just suburban home. It seems like.
So it's kind of it's a completely different change of venue. It seems like from what little I've seen, and it's also like not just like a group of the same people.
Yeah,
or
it's like a family.
People with the same age group. Like there
Yeah.
are kids.
It's like a mom
in
and
this film,
kids and
so-
like coworkers and
I think it's going to be a really interesting addition to the franchise.
Yeah.
So, I mean, like I said,
I'm
I'm not a
pretty
huge
excited
horror
to
fan, but
see
I'm,
it.
I'm pretty excited to see it as well. I
Right.
think there's not a lot of films I've been seeing in theaters over the last few years, but I'm starting to slowly go back and start
Yeah.
watching things in theaters. And I'm pretty excited to see this one.
Me too.
I mean, we almost went to go see this
Yeah,
one.
we
Um,
almost got the Thursday early drop exclusive tickets in Wichita to go and watch it. So we're ready.
Yeah, I'm definitely ready. So I think I might go Sunday when I have time, or next week maybe, and see it. So yeah, I think that wraps it up basically for our review of the Evil Dead franchise and for this movie. We'll be back next week with another podcast. I think Devin will be back by then, but it'd
Yeah.
be great to have you back on another podcast. If you haven't seen, Amber is also part of another podcast from Feely Creative called Silky Moms, where she and Sydney talk about just
Mom things.
being a parent and being a mother
Yep.
and all that entails. So if you haven't checked that out, please go and watch or listen to that. And I think that wraps it up for this week.
Yeah.
So see you next time.
See ya.